I'm Jessica Turner, 32 years old, and until 3 months ago, I was the heart and soul of Turner Digital Solutions, the marketing agency my parents built from nothing. While my older sister Isabella was always the darling who could do no wrong, I was the one grinding 12-hour days, landing major clients, and turning our small family business into a multi-million-dollar operation. When my parents decided to retire, they handed the keys to Isabella despite her having zero experience in our industry. 2 weeks into her reign as CEO, she called me into her office with that familiar smirk and said, "Jessica, your services are no longer required." She thought she'd won by discarding me like yesterday's news, but she had no idea what storm she'd just unleashed. Growing up in the Turner household meant understanding very early that there was a clear hierarchy among the children. My parents, Robert and Linda Turner, had started their digital marketing consultancy from our garage in Portland, Oregon back in 1995 when the internet was still a mysterious frontier to most businesses. Dad began with a second-hand computer and basic web design skills he'd taught himself, while Mom managed client relationships from our kitchen table with nothing but a landline phone and a filing cabinet. Through relentless hard work and genuine talent, they transformed Turner Digital Solutions into a respected regional agency. By the time I was in middle school, our family had grown to include my older sister Isabella, who was 3 years my senior, me in the middle, and our younger brother Marcus, who was 4 years younger. From my earliest memories, it was crystal clear that Isabella occupied a special place in our parents' hearts. She was stunning, charismatic, and seemed to glide through life effortlessly, collecting achievements and admiration. When Isabella brought home straight A's, our parents would plan elaborate celebration dinners at expensive restaurants. When I achieved the same academic success the following semester, I received a distracted "good job, honey," while they scrolled through their phones. In 8th grade, Isabella won the regional debate championship, and my parents framed every newspaper clipping and certificate, creating a shrine in our living room that remained untouched for years. When I won the state science Olympiad in 10th grade, my trophy sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days before being relegated to a dusty shelf in the basement. These patterns became so ingrained in our family dynamic that I stopped expecting equal recognition. While Isabella focused on student government, drama club, and maintaining her social queen bee status, I developed a genuine fascination with our family business. By age 14, I was spending summers at the office, absorbing everything about digital marketing, client relations, and business operations. My father seemed mildly surprised by my interest, but allowed me to observe. "Just don't get in the way," he'd say, not realizing how carefully I was studying every client presentation, every campaign strategy, every problem-solving session. I watched him negotiate contracts, saw how he handled difficult clients, and learned the delicate balance between creativity and business pragmatism. During high school, Isabella applied to prestigious universities with our parents' enthusiastic support and unlimited financial backing. Meanwhile, I researched business programs and marketing schools, paying for application fees with money earned from my part-time job at a local coffee shop since my parents were completely absorbed in Isabella's college preparation. When Isabella was accepted to Northwestern University, our house transformed into a celebration headquarters. There were parties, professional photo shoots, and endless phone calls to relatives broadcasting her achievement. When I received a partial scholarship to a respected state university's business program, my mother said, "That's wonderful, dear," before immediately returning to addressing Isabella's graduation party invitations. College widened the recognition gap even further. While Isabella enjoyed the full university experience with generous financial support from our parents, I worked 25 hours per week at a local marketing firm while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. During school breaks, I worked directly at Turner Digital Solutions, learning everything from social media strategy to financial forecasting. My parents rarely acknowledged these efforts, treating them as expected rather than impressive. Meanwhile, Isabella's internships at trendy tech startups, arranged through our parents' professional connections, were celebrated as brilliant career moves despite her complete lack of understanding about what those companies actually did. Throughout this period, I never lost my passion for digital marketing and business strategy. I genuinely loved watching campaigns evolve from initial concepts to successful implementations. There was something deeply satisfying about creating digital experiences that genuinely connected businesses with their target audiences. This passion sustained me through years of minimal recognition. I also began noticing troubling aspects of Isabella's character that my parents seemed determined to ignore. The casual lies about her whereabouts, the manipulative way she pitted friends against each other for entertainment, and her expectation that others would always clean up her mistakes, both literal and metaphorical. During my senior year of college, I received job offers from 2 major marketing agencies in Seattle. The positions offered better salaries and benefits than I could expect at Turner Digital Solutions. For a moment, I seriously considered accepting one of them, starting fresh somewhere I wouldn't constantly live in Isabella's shadow. But ultimately, I declined both offers. Despite everything, Turner Digital Solutions was in my blood. I believed I could help elevate the company to new heights and perhaps finally earn the recognition I'd worked for my entire life. That decision would prove to be both the best and worst choice I'd ever made. My first day as a full-time employee at Turner Digital Solutions began without ceremony. Mom handed me an employee handbook that hadn't been updated since 2010, and Dad pointed me toward a cramped cubicle near the supply closet. "Start by organizing these client files," he said, dropping a chaotic stack of folders on my desk. That disorganized pile became a metaphor for my early years at the company, sorting through messes, creating systems, and bringing order to chaos without any acknowledgement. Within 6 months, I had completely overhauled our client management system, reducing project turnaround times by 40% and improving client satisfaction scores significantly. My father's only comment was, "Good. Now maybe we can focus on landing bigger accounts." Rather than becoming discouraged, I channeled my energy into creating a comprehensive growth strategy for the company. I presented it during a staff meeting, complete with market analysis, competitive positioning, and projected revenue increases. Several colleagues nodded appreciatively, but my father interrupted halfway through. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves with fancy PowerPoints," he said dismissively. "We've been successful with our current approach for 20 years. Instead of arguing, I implemented my strategy piece by piece without fanfare. I took on increasingly complex responsibilities, moving from junior account coordinator to senior project manager within 18 months. I worked 60-hour weeks, arriving before everyone else, and leaving after my father had gone home. During this period, I cultivated relationships with people who would later become crucial allies. Marcus Chun, our lead graphic designer, initially seemed skeptical of the boss's daughter but grew to respect my work ethic and creative vision. "You actually understand what makes good design work," he told me after I spent an entire weekend helping him meet an impossible deadline for a demanding client. Lisa Rodriguez joined as our social media specialist in my second year. Sharp, innovative, and results-driven, she appreciated my strategic thinking and frequently collaborated with me on integrated campaigns. David Kim, a talented web developer we recruited from a larger agency, became another trusted colleague. His technical expertise complemented my business strategy, and together we modernized many of our service offerings. As my influence grew, so did the company's success. I introduced project management software that streamlined our workflow and improved client communication. I developed relationships with new vendors that reduced our operational costs by 20%. I created a more systematic approach to employee development that reduced turnover and improved the quality of our work. The most significant breakthrough came in my 4th year when I secured a contract with Pacific Northwest Healthcare, a major regional medical group that had previously worked exclusively with larger agencies. After months of persistent networking and a comprehensive proposal that addressed their specific challenges, they awarded us a multi-year digital transformation project worth over $2 million. The success of that campaign led to 3 additional healthcare clients and established Turner Digital Solutions as a serious player in the medical marketing space. Our agency's profile and profitability transformed almost overnight. Through all these achievements, my parents remained lukewarmly impressed at best. "Not bad," my father said after the Pacific Northwest Healthcare campaign won a regional marketing award. My mother occasionally mentioned my contributions during family dinners, but always in passing, never with the enthusiasm that accompanied any news about Isabella. Speaking of Isabella, her appearances at the company during these years were infrequent, but always dramatic. After completing her MBA at Northwestern, she cycled through several positions at various tech companies and consulting firms, never staying longer than 14 months anywhere. When she visited our office, she'd breeze in wearing expensive designer clothes, kiss everyone on both cheeks, and make vague comments about digital transformation and synergistic opportunities. During company events, she somehow positioned herself prominently in photographs despite having contributed nothing to the projects being celebrated. What bothered me most was how she'd casually take credit for innovations or initiatives that had been entirely my work. "Oh yes, I actually suggested something similar to Dad years ago," she'd say, when someone complimented a new service offering I developed. "That's based on a case study from business school," she'd claim about a strategy I'd created through months of research and testing. My resentment grew, but so did my dedication to the company. By my 9th year, Turner Digital Solutions had quintupled its annual revenue, expanded to 42 full-time employees, and established a reputation for excellence throughout the Pacific Northwest. We had moved to larger offices twice to accommodate our growth, and our client portfolio included everything from healthcare systems to major retail chains. My role had evolved to essentially running day-to-day operations while my father maintained final approval on major decisions, and my mother managed long-term client relationships. They had begun discussing retirement more frequently, mentioning it during family dinners, but never making concrete plans. Then suddenly, Isabella began showing unusual interest in the company. After years of barely acknowledging its existence except to name-drop our successes at networking events, she started calling my parents daily about business matters. She arranged lunches with my father to discuss his vision for succession. She even appeared at client meetings, something she'd never done before, taking notes and asking surface-level questions that revealed her complete lack of understanding. I sensed something shifting, but I was too busy managing our largest project to date, a comprehensive digital overhaul for a major university system that would showcase our capabilities to an entirely new market segment. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs flashing around me. The announcement came during our monthly family dinner at my parents' house on a rainy Sunday evening in October. Mom had prepared her famous salmon with herbs, Dad had opened an expensive bottle of wine, and even Marcus had driven up from San Francisco where he worked as a software engineer. The atmosphere seemed celebratory, though no one had mentioned any particular occasion. Between the main course and dessert, my father clinked his wine glass and stood up. "Your mother and I have made an important decision," he began, smiling at all of us, but his gaze lingering on Isabella. "After 28 wonderful years, we decided it's time to step back from active management of Turner Digital Solutions." This wasn't entirely surprising. They were both in their early 60s and had been hinting at retirement for the past 2 years. What came next, however, felt like a physical blow to my chest. "We're thrilled to announce that Isabella will be taking over as CEO effective next month." The room seemed to tilt around me as my father continued explaining their decision. Isabella beamed while my mother nodded enthusiastically beside her. Marcus looked confused, glancing between Isabella and me with obvious concern. I somehow maintained my composure, forcing my face into a neutral expression while my stomach churned with disbelief and rage. When my father finished speaking, Isabella stood and delivered a polished speech about honoring their legacy and leading the company into the digital future. She spoke about innovation and growth as if she had any understanding of what those concepts meant in our industry. She hadn't worked a single day in digital marketing. She couldn't distinguish between SEO and SEM. She had never managed a campaign, negotiated with a difficult client, or faced the pressure of meeting impossible deadlines. Yet here she was, accepting the position I had effectively been performing for years while actually understanding every aspect of the business. When everyone looked at me expectantly, I offered congratulations that sounded hollow even to my own ears. After dessert, which I couldn't taste, I asked my parents to speak privately. In my father's study, surrounded by awards and photos from the company's growth, I finally expressed my true feelings. Dad, Mom, how could you make this decision without even discussing it with me? I've dedicated my entire career to Turner Digital Solutions. I know every client, every campaign, every operational detail. Isabella has zero experience in our industry. My mother reached over and patted my hand condescendingly. Sweetheart, Isabella has an MBA from Northwestern. She has the formal business education needed to lead a growing company. My father nodded in agreement. Besides, Jessica, you'll still have your position. Isabella will need your knowledge during the transition. My position? I repeated, incredulous. Dad, I've been effectively running this company for the past 3 years while you've been gradually stepping back. Everyone knows it, including our major clients. A flash of acknowledgement crossed his face before he dismissed it. That's an exaggeration. Yes, you've taken on more responsibility, but the strategic decisions have always been mine. This was demonstrably false. For the past 2 years, he'd approved my recommendations without question while spending half his time at their vacation home in Hawaii. My mother interjected with what she clearly believed was the real explanation. Jessica, the truth is that Isabella needs this opportunity. Her last position didn't work out as planned, and this is a chance for her to really establish herself with a successful company. And there it was, the pattern of our entire lives. Isabella's needs always came first, regardless of merit, effort, or fairness. I spent that night alternating between fury and heartbreak, seriously considering submitting my resignation immediately. I updated my LinkedIn profile and browsed job openings until sunrise, imagining the satisfaction of walking away from the family that had never valued my contributions. But when morning came, I thought about the employees whose livelihoods depended on the company's success. People like Marcus, who had just bought his first house based on his salary security. Lisa, who had turned down offers from larger agencies to stay with us. David, who had relocated his family from California specifically to join our team. I couldn't abandon them to Isabella's inexperienced leadership. So I decided to stay and ensure a smooth transition, at least until I could secure their futures and make alternative arrangements for my own career. The following month was excruciating. I created comprehensive documentation of all ongoing campaigns, client relationships, and operational procedures. I arranged meetings between Isabella and key clients, vendors, and employees. I developed a transition plan that would have been appropriate for an experienced executive, though I doubted Isabella would follow any of it. Throughout this process, Isabella's behavior confirmed my worst fears. During transition meetings, she checked her phone while I explained critical information about campaign performance metrics. She rescheduled important client presentations at the last minute for personal shopping appointments. She dismissed years of industry expertise with comments like, "That's old school thinking. Marketing is marketing. The platform specifics don't really matter." Most alarmingly, she began having closed-door meetings with representatives from Apex Marketing, our largest competitor, claiming they were just networking connections from business school. I didn't trust her explanations, but I had no authority to question her activities. The night before the official transition, I stayed late at the office, backing up critical files and making copies of client contacts and campaign data. It felt paranoid, but something in my gut told me to prepare for the worst. I also took a moment to send personal emails to several key clients, thanking them for their trust over the years and providing my personal contact information in case they ever needed anything. I had no idea how prescient this action would prove to be. The morning of Isabella's first day as CEO began with a company-wide meeting in our main conference room. Every employee gathered, curiosity and uncertainty evident on their faces. Isabella arrived 30 minutes late, dressed in an expensive suit that seemed more appropriate for a Wall Street firm than a creative agency. She positioned herself at the head of the table that had been my father's domain and, unofficially, mine for the past several years. "Thank you all for coming," she began with a practiced smile. "Today marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter for Turner Digital Solutions. I know many of you have been here for years, and I want to assure you that I respect the foundation that's been built." She paused dramatically. "But respect for the past doesn't mean we can't evolve. My vision for Turner Digital Solutions involves significant modernization, strategic pivoting, and aggressive growth through new partnerships. For the next hour, she outlined plans that sounded impressive to someone unfamiliar with our industry, but revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of digital marketing. She spoke about leveraging synergies and optimizing conversion funnels while proposing strategies that anyone with real marketing experience would recognize as outdated or counterproductive. Throughout her presentation, she occasionally glanced at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Not once did she acknowledge my role in the company's current success or thank me for the transition process. After the meeting, several employees approached me with concerned expressions, but I maintained a professional demeanor, assuring them that change always requires adjustment. The morning proceeded with routine tasks and scheduled client calls. Isabella remained in her new office with the door closed, presumably learning about her new responsibilities. At 2:47 p.m., I received an email from her new assistant requesting my presence in the CEO's office at 3 p.m. When I arrived, Isabella was seated behind the massive desk, a leather portfolio open before her. She didn't invite me to sit. "Jessica, I'll be direct because I respect your time," she began, though her tone conveyed no respect whatsoever. "I've spent the past month evaluating our organizational structure and identifying areas for optimization. After careful consideration, I've determined that your current role creates redundancy in our new operational framework." I stood perfectly still, processing her words. "Redundancy?" I repeated. "I'm the most knowledgeable person in this company about every client, every campaign, and every operational system." Isabella smiled thinly. "Yes, and you've documented all of that beautifully during the transition. Thank you for that. But moving forward, we need fresh perspectives, not someone anchored to outdated methodologies." She slid a folder across the desk. "Here's your severance package, 3 months' salary and benefits, which is quite generous considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I asked, not touching the folder. She sighed as if I were being deliberately obtuse. "Jessica, let's be adults here. We both know you don't support my vision for the company. Your presence would undermine my leadership and create unnecessary friction." The casualness with which she dismissed 10 years of my life, thousands of hours of overtime, countless sacrifices, all while sitting in an office I had effectively occupied for years, struck me with such force that I physically stepped backward. "Do Mom and Dad know about this decision?" I managed to ask. Something flickered across her face, satisfaction, perhaps. "They've entrusted the company to my leadership, which includes all personnel decisions. HR has prepared the necessary paperwork, and security will escort you to collect your personal items." Within 20 minutes, I found myself walking through the office I had helped build, past shocked colleagues, with a security guard trailing behind me. Marcus stood in the doorway of the design department, his face dark with anger. Lisa emerged from a client meeting, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. David stepped forward as if to intervene, but I subtly shook my head. This wasn't the time or place for confrontation. I collected my few personal items, a photo of our team after winning the Healthcare Marketing Award, a coffee mug Marcus had given me, and a small plant from my desk. My professional materials remained untouched. They were company property. As I walked to the elevator, employees stopped their work to watch. Some looked confused, others angry, and a few seemed frightened about what this meant for their own job security. Jake, the security guard who had actually been hired based on my recommendation, mumbled an apology as we reached the parking garage. "This isn't right, Miss Turner. Everyone knows what you've built here." I thanked him quietly and placed my small box of belongings in my car. As I drove away from the building I had helped design and finance, the emotions I had suppressed began to surface. Tears blurred my vision, forcing me to pull over in a coffee shop parking lot several blocks away. My phone buzzed continuously with text messages from colleagues, expressions of shock, outrage, support, and questions about what had really happened. I couldn't bring myself to respond yet. The drive home became a blur of disbelief and heartbreak. I parked in my driveway and sat motionless, staring at nothing, reliving the humiliation and betrayal. Eventually, I made my way inside and collapsed on my couch, the emotional dam finally breaking completely. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. For the years of unrecognized work, for the betrayal by my own sister, for the blindness of my parents who had never truly seen my value. When the tears finally subsided, I found myself staring at the ceiling of my living room as the afternoon light faded to evening. Something shifted within me during those quiet hours alone. The devastation gradually transformed into cold, clear determination. Isabella had made a catastrophic mistake, one born of arrogance and ignorance. She thought she had won by taking the company and discarding me. She believed that with my departure, she had secured her position and eliminated any obstacle to her plans. But she had overlooked something crucial. No one knew Turner Digital Solutions, its strengths, weaknesses, relationships, and operational intricacies, better than I did. And I had just been freed from any obligation to protect a company that had so callously discarded me. That night, as I ordered takeout I couldn't taste and tried to process what had happened, a plan began forming in my mind. "This isn't over," I whispered to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "Not by a long shot." The week following my termination became a calculated campaign of strategic action. I allowed myself exactly 24 hours to process the emotional aftermath, one day to feel the hurt, betrayal, and anger. Then I packed those feelings away and approached my situation like the most critical project I'd ever managed. First, I transformed my home office into a war room. I installed a large whiteboard where I mapped out Turner Digital Solutions' organizational structure, ongoing campaigns, and key relationships. On another wall, I created a timeline of actions and targets. My dining table disappeared beneath stacks of notes, contracts, and industry publications. The severance agreement Isabella had offered remained and signed on my kitchen counter. My initial advantage came from an unexpected source: Turner Digital Solutions' corporate structure. 3 years earlier, when we'd reorganized for tax purposes, I had worked closely with our corporate attorney to update the company's bylaws and operating agreements. My father had signed them without reading the details, trusting my summary. What Isabella didn't know was that those documents contained specific protections I had included based on scenarios I'd feared might someday occur, that my contributions might be devalued or that family politics might interfere with business decisions. One particular clause required board approval for any major personnel changes affecting senior management positions within the first year of a leadership transition. Since the board consisted of my parents, Isabella, and technically still me, as my termination from employment didn't automatically remove me from the board, this gave me significant leverage. On day 3, I received a call from Lisa, who spoke in hushed tones from her car in the company parking lot. "Jessica, things are falling apart here. Isabella called an all-hands meeting yesterday and announced a strategic realignment with Apex Marketing. She's talking about outsourcing our creative services to them and focusing on high-level strategy consulting." This confirmed my suspicions. Apex had wanted to acquire Turner Digital Solutions for years, but had been consistently rebuffed by my father. Isabella wasn't planning to run the company. She was dismantling it for quick profit. Lisa continued providing crucial information. Isabella had already alienated 2 major clients with her dismissive attitude toward their campaign performance concerns. She had questioned the necessity of our quality assurance processes, which had been central to our reputation for excellence. She had also brought in expensive consultants who knew nothing about digital marketing to optimize our operations. My next move involved a discreet lunch with our family's longtime attorney, Stephen Mitchell. Though technically the company's lawyer, Stephen had known me since childhood and had always treated me with respect. "What Isabella did was legally questionable," he confirmed after hearing my story. "Terminating a senior officer without board approval potentially violates company bylaws. And if she's planning the asset deals you suspect, she's on very dangerous legal ground." Stephen also helped me understand another crucial detail. My parents had transferred ownership stakes to both Isabella and me years ago for tax planning purposes, 20% each, while they retained 60% collectively. This meant I wasn't just a board member, but a minority shareholder with specific rights. Through careful networking, I learned something else vital. Isabella was drowning in debt. Her seemingly glamorous lifestyle in Chicago had been financed largely through credit cards and personal loans. Her previous position had ended involuntarily due to performance issues. Taking control of Turner Digital Solutions wasn't about family legacy. It was a financial lifeline she desperately needed. Meanwhile, I methodically reached out to key clients with whom I'd built strong relationships over the years. I maintained strict professionalism, never disparaging Isabella or the company. Instead, I simply expressed gratitude for our past collaborations and made myself available if they ever needed independent consultation on digital marketing strategies. Almost universally, they responded with concerns about recent interactions with Turner Digital Solutions' new leadership. My most important strategic meeting happened 12 days after my termination. Marcus, Lisa, and David met me at a restaurant 40 miles from our office to avoid being seen. They brought devastating news. Isabella had already signed a letter of intent with Apex Marketing to transfer most of our client accounts to them in exchange for a substantial finder's fee. She had terminated 3 experienced team members to reduce overhead. Most alarmingly, she had begun approaching our clients about contract modifications that would significantly reduce the quality of service they received. The company will collapse within 6 weeks if this continues, David said gravely. The reputation we've spent years building is being destroyed daily. Lisa slid a USB drive across the table. These are copies of the Apex negotiations and financial projections she's been hiding from the board. I could lose my job for this, but what she's doing isn't just wrong, it's potentially illegal. I thank them for taking such risks. I have a plan, I assured them. But I need your eyes and ears inside for a little while longer. That night, I reviewed the documents Lisa had provided. They confirmed my worst fears and strengthened my resolve. The USB drive contained emails between Isabella and Apex executives that clearly indicated they had been planning this acquisition since before my parents' retirement announcement. With my strategy crystallizing, I established a consulting LLC to maintain my industry credentials and provide a legitimate business front for my activities. I leased a small office space and created a professional website highlighting my experience without directly mentioning Turner Digital Solutions. By the end of 2 weeks, my home office walls were covered with information, connections, and plans. I had identified every vulnerability in Isabella's position. I understood exactly what she wanted and why. I knew which regulations she was likely violating and which contractual obligations she was ignoring. Most importantly, I had documented evidence of her true intentions for the company my parents had built and I had helped grow. As I reviewed my comprehensive counter-strategy that Friday evening, I felt a calm confidence replace the hurt and anger that had initially driven me. Isabella had fired me thinking she was eliminating an obstacle. Instead, she had freed me to become her most dangerous adversary, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. I launched my counteroffensive exactly 20 days after my termination, beginning with a strategic meeting at the Portland Business Club with representatives from our 3 largest ongoing accounts, Northwest Medical Group, Pacific Retail Chain, and the Oregon Tourism Board. These contracts collectively represented over 70% of Turner Digital Solutions' current revenue and cash flow. I had arranged the meeting through personal relationships, positioning it as an informal consultation about digital marketing trends in the post-pandemic landscape. Dr. Rebecca Stone from Northwest Medical, Jennifer Walsh from Pacific Retail, and Mark Stevens from Oregon Tourism all attended, curious about my sudden departure from Turner Digital Solutions. I appreciate you all taking the time to meet with me. I began after we'd ordered lunch. I value our professional relationships and wanted to touch base personally after my transition away from Turner Digital Solutions. I kept my language carefully neutral and professional. Jennifer was the first to address the elephant in the room. Jessica, we were shocked to hear about your departure. The account manager Isabella assigned to our campaigns barely understands our brand voice, let alone our complex inventory integration requirements. Dr. Stone nodded in agreement. We've had similar concerns. The new team missed a crucial compliance deadline last week and submitted marketing materials that could have jeopardized our medical licensing if we hadn't caught the errors. I listened attentively, asked clarifying questions, and offered limited guidance without overstepping ethical boundaries. I never suggested they take any specific action regarding their contracts with Turner Digital Solutions. I didn't need to. By the end of lunch, all three had independently mentioned their contractual rights to review significant changes in account management and express concerns about service quality deterioration. 2 days later, Turner Digital Solutions received formal letters from all three clients, placing their accounts under review pending evaluation of recent service changes and their impact on campaign performance. The letters cited specific instances of missed deadlines, compliance failures, and communication breakdowns. The impact was immediate and severe. These account reviews froze over $8 million in scheduled payments and created a cash flow crisis that Isabella was completely unprepared to handle. My phone rang at 6:23 that evening. Isabella's name flashed on the screen. I watched it ring until voicemail picked up. She called 6 more times in succession, then sent a text. "This is unprofessional and vindictive. Call me immediately." I didn't respond. The following day, I executed the second phase of my plan, a meeting with Portland Community Bank, which held Turner Digital Solutions' operating line of credit and financed most of our major equipment purchases. Patricia Williams, the relationship manager who had worked with our company for over 8 years, welcomed me warmly. "Jessica, we've been concerned about the leadership transition. Your father always said you were the one who really understood the financial operations of the business." Our conversation focused on industry trends and general concerns about digital marketing financing. I carefully avoided making any direct accusations about Turner Digital Solutions' current management. However, when Patricia asked about my departure, I truthfully explained that it had been sudden and involuntary, and that I had significant concerns about the company's current direction. "That's very troubling to hear," Patricia said, making notes. "We've already noticed some irregularities in recent financial submissions and cash flow projections." I simply nodded, letting the implications speak for themselves. Within 48 hours, Portland Community Bank announced a comprehensive review of all outstanding loans to Turner Digital Solutions, effectively freezing access to their entire credit facility, nearly $3 million in available financing. The third blow came from an unexpected quarter. Several key vendors with whom I had built strong relationships over years of fair dealing and prompt payments began requiring advance payment from Turner Digital Solutions rather than extending the usual net 30 terms. This created yet another cash flow problem for Isabella, who now faced the impossible task of making payroll while major revenue sources were frozen and suppliers demanded immediate payment. Through my network of contacts, I learned that operations at Turner Digital Solutions were rapidly descending into chaos. 2 major campaigns had been suspended due to budget constraints. Employees were openly questioning Isabella's decisions. Apex Marketing had mysteriously become less interested in their acquisition plans, likely sensing the company's growing instability. On day 7 of my counteroffensive, I received the call I had been expecting. My father's name appeared on my phone screen late in the evening. I took a deep breath and answered. "Jessica, what the hell is going on?" His voice carried a mixture of anger and panic. "We're getting calls about account reviews, credit freezes, and vendor problems. Isabella says you're behind this somehow." I remained calm. "Dad, I haven't done anything improper. I've simply maintained my professional relationships, as anyone would after leaving a position." "Don't play games with me," he snapped. "You know exactly what you're doing." "Do I, Dad? Maybe we should discuss what Isabella did first. Did she tell you she fired me the day after taking over, with no warning and no cause? Did she mention the security escort out of the building, or the insulting severance offer?" His momentary silence told me she had not shared these details. "She said you two had agreed to part ways due to strategic differences," he finally said, his voice less certain. "That's a creative interpretation," I replied coolly. There was no agreement or discussion. She called me redundant and had me escorted out like a criminal after 10 years of building your company. My mother's voice suddenly came on the line. They were on speakerphone. "Jessica, surely you're exaggerating. Isabella would never." I cut her off, my patience finally wearing thin. "Check your email, both of you." I've just sent you copies of the termination notice, the security escort authorization, and the severance offer. Also included are emails between Isabella and Apex Marketing discussing the sale of company assets at below-market rates, discussions that began months before your retirement announcement. The prolonged silence that followed suggested they were reviewing the documents. Finally, my father spoke, his voice notably subdued. "We didn't know, Jessica. Isabella told us you had agreed to transition into a consulting role, but then changed your mind. And you believed that without even calling to ask me?" The hurt I'd suppressed for weeks crept into my voice. "After everything I've contributed to Turner Digital Solutions, you didn't think it was worth a single phone call to hear my side?" More silence. Then my mother, sounding shaken. "What do you want, Jessica?" It was the first time in my adult life they had ever asked me that question and seemed genuinely interested in the answer. "I want to meet as board members and shareholders to discuss Isabella's actions and their consequences," I stated firmly. "Bring your attorney. This isn't about personal grievances anymore. It's about saving what's left of the company." I ended the call before they could respond, my heart racing but my resolve stronger than ever. The final gambit. The emergency board meeting convened 3 days later in Stephen Mitchell's conference room, neutral territory that none of US could claim as home turf. My parents arrived first, looking older and more worn than I remembered. Isabella swept in 20 minutes late, flanked by an expensive attorney from downtown Portland whose hourly rate probably exceeded most people's monthly salaries. I had come alone, carrying only a slim portfolio and the quiet confidence of someone who had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Stephen opened the meeting with a review of corporate bylaws and fiduciary responsibilities. Isabella's attorney immediately began objecting to various procedural points, clearly trying to establish dominance through legal intimidation. "If I may," I interrupted calmly, "before we discuss procedures, perhaps we should address the immediate crisis facing the company." I opened my portfolio and distributed copies of Turner Digital Solutions' current financial position, which I had compiled through public records, vendor reports, and information from my allies still inside the company. As of yesterday, Turner Digital Solutions has 17 days of operating cash remaining. 3 major clients representing 73% of revenue are in active contract review. The company's credit facility has been frozen pending financial investigation. And perhaps most critically, 8 key employees have submitted resignations effective next Friday. My father studied the documents, his face growing pale. "How did you obtain this information?" "The same way I've obtained every piece of critical business intelligence for the past 10 years, Dad. Through relationships built on trust and confidence." Isabella finally spoke, her voice sharp with accusation. "You orchestrated this crisis to sabotage my leadership. This is corporate terrorism." I turned to face her directly for the first time since entering the room. "Isabella, I didn't sabotage anything. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own decisions. Every client review, every vendor concern, every employee resignation, those are reactions to your management style, not my influence." Her attorney leaned forward. "Ms. Turner, are you denying that you've actively interfered with your former employer's business relationships?" "I'm stating that I've maintained professional relationships developed over a decade of excellent service. When former colleagues and clients reach out for advice, I respond professionally. I haven't violated any non-compete agreements because Isabella never offered me one. I haven't disclosed proprietary information because I haven't needed to. The company's problems are entirely self-inflicted." Stephen consulted his notes. "Isabella, do you want to respond to the allegations regarding the Apex Marketing negotiations?" "Those were preliminary discussions about strategic partnerships," she said defensively. "All major business decisions require exploring various options." I slid another document across the table. This email from Apex's CEO to Isabella, dated 6 weeks before Dad's retirement announcement, discusses specific asset transfer timelines and commission structures. This wasn't exploring options. This was planning a predetermined sale. My mother picked up the email, her hands trembling slightly as she read. When she finished, she looked at Isabella with an expression I'd never seen before, profound disappointment mixed with recognition of a truth she'd avoided confronting. "Isabella, My father said quietly, "Is this accurate?" For the first time since I'd known her, Isabella looked genuinely vulnerable. The polished confidence cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she said, her voice rising. "Everyone expected me to immediately master a business I'd never worked in. The employees resented me from day one. The clients treated me like an incompetent placeholder. I was trying to find a solution that would preserve value for the family while cashing out as quickly as possible," I finished. "Isabella, if you had asked for help, if you had acknowledged what you didn't know, if you had treated me as a resource instead of a threat, we could have worked together. Instead, you decided to eliminate me and strip mine the company for short-term profit." The room fell silent except for the rain pattering against Stephen's windows. My father finally spoke. "What are you proposing, Jessica?" This was the moment I had prepared for, the culmination of weeks of strategic planning. "Isabella resigns as CEO, effective immediately. I assume operational control under a 6-month interim management agreement while we stabilize the company. During that period, we implement a formal succession plan with clear performance metrics and board oversight." Isabella's attorney objected immediately. "My client has done nothing illegal and won't be forced from her position by family pressure." I smiled slightly. She's right. Isabella hasn't done anything illegal yet. But signing asset transfer agreements without board approval would constitute breach of fiduciary duty. Continuing to operate with knowledge of impending insolvency without proper disclosure would be even more problematic. Stephen nodded gravely. "Jessica is correct. The current situation creates significant legal exposure for all board members." "There's another option," I continued. "Isabella maintains the CEO title while I handle operations as COO. We establish clear boundaries and accountability measures. But this only works if Isabella genuinely commits to learning the business instead of dismantling it." My parents exchanged a long look filled with years of unspoken communication. "What about the immediate crisis?" my mother asked. "Can you actually stabilize things?" "Within 2 weeks," I confirmed. "I've already had preliminary conversations with the major clients. They're willing to continue their relationships if they see competent management restored. The vendor payment issues can be resolved with a revised payment schedule I've already negotiated. The employee resignations can be reversed if they see leadership changes." Isabella stared at me across the table. "You've been planning this entire scenario since the day you were fired." "No," I corrected. "I've been planning to save the company since the day I realized you intended to destroy it." The vote was anticlimactic. My parents approved the interim management structure by a 4-1 margin, with Isabella abstaining rather than formally opposing. Turner Digital Solutions' holiday party took place in our newly expanded offices, paid for with revenue from the largest quarter in company history. The team had grown to 58 employees, including several strategic hires who brought expertise in emerging digital platforms. Isabella attended the party, but left early. True to her nature, she had lasted exactly 4 months in the COO role before accepting a position with a consulting firm in Seattle. Our working relationship had been professional but distant. She fulfilled her obligations while clearly resenting the reversal of fortune. My parents announced their complete retirement effective January 1st, with me officially assuming the CEO role. For the first time in my life, the announcement felt like recognition rather than consolation. As the party wound down, Marcus, Lisa, and David joined me in the conference room where this story had really begun 6 months earlier. "So, what's next for Turner Digital Solutions?" Lisa asked, raising her glass. I looked around at the team I'd fought to protect, in the company I'd refused to abandon, thinking about the lessons learned through betrayal and recovery. Next, we build something even better than what we had before. And we make sure it can never be taken away by someone who doesn't understand its value. Marcus grinned. "Sound like a plan. But maybe next time we put some safeguards in the corporate bylaws about family drama." "Already done," I assured him. Stephen helped me draft new governance structures that prioritize competence over bloodlines. That night, driving home through Portland's familiar streets, I reflected on the strange path that had led me here. Isabella's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also freed me to fight for what I'd built instead of simply hoping for recognition. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Proud of what you've accomplished, Jess. Should have said that years ago." I smiled, understanding that some victories are worth the wait, especially when they're earned through your own strength rather than granted as a gift. Turner Digital Solutions would thrive not because it was handed down through family privilege, but because it was led by someone who understood that true success comes from building something valuable and protecting it fiercely. The war was over, and for the first time in my life, I had won it completely on my own terms. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked on my office door. "Jessica, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your sister." Isabella stood in the doorway, looking more subdued than I'd ever seen her. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a more modest business suit, and something in her expression suggested the entitled confidence I'd known all my life had been tempered by experience. "I was in town for a client meeting," she said. "I was hoping we could talk." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where she'd delivered my termination notice 18 months earlier. "How's Seattle treating you?" I asked. "Better than I expected, honestly. The consulting firm specializes in organizational restructuring for family businesses. Turns out I have some relevant experience with dysfunction." Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling at that. "Jessica, I owe you an apology," she continued. "Not just for firing you, but for 32 years of taking credit for your work and dismissing your contributions. I convinced myself I deserved things because they were handed to me, but I never stopped to consider what you'd earned." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives. Instead, I saw something I'd rarely witnessed in Isabella: genuine humility. "What changed?" I asked. "Failure," she said simply. "When I left Turner Digital Solutions, I thought I could replicate my success anywhere. Turns out, I never actually succeeded at anything on my own merit. It took 6 months of struggling in a job where family connections meant nothing to understand the difference between achievement and entitlement." She paused, looking around the office that had once been hers for such a brief, disastrous period. "I also learned something about leadership. Real leaders don't eliminate threats, they cultivate talent. You tried to teach me that, but I was too threatened by your competence to listen." "And now?" I asked. "Now I'm genuinely good at helping dysfunctional family businesses recognize their problems and implement solutions. Turns out having been the problem gives me unique insight into fixing it." For the first time in our adult lives, I felt like I was talking to a real person instead of a performance. "I'm glad you found something that works for you, Isabella." "Thank you."
"And Jessica?"
"What you've built here is remarkable. Turner Digital Solutions was successful before, but now it's exceptional. You've created something that will last." After she left, I sat in my office thinking about family, forgiveness, and the unexpected ways people can change. Isabella would never be my closest confidant, but for the first time, she felt like someone I could respect. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "New client wants to meet Monday." They specifically requested the Jessica Turner who saved Turner Digital Solutions. "Looks like your reputation is preceding you." I laughed, remembering the scared, angry woman who had been escorted from this building 18 months ago. That Jessica had been fighting for recognition and validation from people who would never truly see her worth. This Jessica had learned to recognize her own value and build something worthy of it. The difference had made all the difference.